What is up, guys? Hbox here. I want to make a video over some recent news regarding emulation drama or even emulation lawsuits, of course, in the hands of Nintendo. This time with our friends over at the Yuzu emulation team. You might have seen a few tweets about this going around and recently what happened, so I'm going to go ahead and summarize it for this video in case you weren't aware. It's no secret, and everyone has known that today with copyright laws. The emulators are legal while the game ROMs are not, and that's fine. This is how everyone from hobbyists and gaming preservationists all the way up to your favorite slippy grinders turned Smash Bros. Melee pro players have operated. And let me explain it in layman's terms. Old video games basically don't exist anymore. You can only buy them on the secondary market, a way that the original company like Nintendo does not make any money on. The games are no longer printed, and circulation eventually dries up, which make the price of these games skyrocket to unrealistic proportions. If you want to buy a physical copy of an old game that is no longer in print, like any other media product, you gotta buy it from someone else or some other company that owns it, and they can jack up prices how they want, and then you gotta buy those, right? But of course, the parent company, Nintendo, or the parent publisher, doesn't make any money on these secondary purchases. It's like anything with albums, vinyl, games, books, electronics, whatever you want to call it. It happens the same way here. The thing is, they're video games, so they're lines of code which can be shared easily online. So, enter emulators, right? These programs mimic how a game console works on current hardware. For instance, you can download a Super Nintendo emulator to your computer, which functions like an original SNES, to play the old games that are no longer available. So while you don't own the physical copies of the games, you have the emulator on your computer, and you're able to play the games, right? It's the same experience, minus the physical aspect. And it's incredibly easy to do so, which meant it became a very popular way for players to introduce themselves to games. Myself included, using the SNES 9X emulator when I was 10 years old. And I guarantee you I would not be here making this video or have an audience or be a pro gamer if it wasn't for those years I had on that emulator back when I couldn't afford, or my family couldn't afford, Super Nintendo. Getting that emulator is perfectly legal, since it's all written from the ground up with no copyrighted information. Getting the games, though, is a different story, and not something any of us support unless you own the original title. Yeah. There's plenty you can do with emulators, though, without downloading these ROMs. You can make legal backups of your own games into ROMs. You can create and run entirely new games or applications for said console. That's what's generally known as homebrewing in the community. You don't have to use these emulators to, pirate or play games that you don't own. There's other uses for these emulators as well. And most importantly, there has been a legal precedent for allowing this. In 1999, Sony sued the company Connectix over their emulator Virtual Game Station. And guess what? Connectix won. This helped set a precedent for the last 20 plus years and led to our current understanding of emulators good, ROMs bad, well, that sort of give and take. But now, enter an elite force of Nintendo ninjas ready to take down anything they see as a threat. Emulation is not easy. It requires significantly more processing power and programming prowess to accurately emulate the old hardware. Usually emulators are a really good generation or two behind gaming consoles, and part of why there really is no good solution right now for a PS5 or Xbox Series emulator. What there is, however, is a Switch emulator. And not just any Switch emulator, a really good Switch emulator, and it's really popular. Surely you've heard of Yuzu before. Nintendo's underpowered 7-year-old hardware has been emulated to hell and back over the years, with development of the emulator getting so optimized that it can literally run games better than on Nintendo's own Switch. I repeat, the Yuzu emulator is more powerful and can run Switch games better than a Nintendo Switch. You see already where the problem lies, right? We're already getting started here. There's much more to this. You want to play Smash in 4K? Done. You want to play Pokemon Scarlet and Violet at 60 FPS? Deal. We do what Nintendo don't. Essentially, Yuzu gave players these options that were highly requested from the player base. Funny story, actually. It's been known that Nintendo was targeting the Yuzu emulator for about a week now, and have been working on a video on it, only for a decision to suddenly drop today before anyone expected. So I was working on this video about Nintendo targeting Yuzu. Today, as of filming this, the decision was dropped, so we had to update the script, and that's what I'm saying right now. The verdict, cease and desist! No, actually. The verdict was settled with Nintendo being awarded $2.4 million in damages and a permanent injunction. The entire 7-page permanent injunction is publicly available online, but I won't bore you with all the legalese. Instead, I'll tell you. In short, it appears that anyone from the Yuzu team must cease work on the Yuzu emulator, accessing its source code so that no one can pick up the project, and also prevent them from working on emulation for other Nintendo systems. The Yuzu team has issued the following statement. Hello, users and Citra fans. We write today to inform you that Yuzu and Yuzu support of Citra are being discontinued effective immediately. Yuzu and its team has always been against piracy. We started the project in good faith, had a passion for Nintendo and its consoles and games, and we were not intending to cause harm. But we've seen that because of our projects can circumvent Nintendo's technological protection measures and allow users to play games outside of authorized hardware, they have led to extensive piracy. In particular, we have been deeply disappointed when users have used our software to leak game content prior to its release and ruin the experience for legitimate purchasers and fans. We have come to the decision that we cannot continue to allow this to occur. Piracy was never our intention, and we believe that piracy of video games and on video game consoles should end. Effective today, we'll be pulling our code repositories offline, discontinuing our Patreon accounts and Discord servers, and soon shutting down our websites. We hope our actions will be a small step toward ending piracy of all creators' works. Thank you for your years of support and understanding of our decision. Now, did you notice something there? It's not just Yuzu, but Citra. Citra will also be discontinued. Citra is the leading emulator for the Nintendo DS and 3DS, and it falls under the same lawsuit because it shares management under the Yuzu team. You want it to run Mario 64 DS with actual analog support? Nope. Do you want to play your favorite game in a resolution higher than 400 by 240? Nope. The platforms are discontinued and not really offered on any sort of real virtual console service either. Even though Yuzu did play by the rules, this likely came from Yuzu getting so big that its sheer existence encouraged so many others to get into emulating with illegally obtained ROMs. We've seen more game leaks coming from Switch games hitting the internet days or weeks before release more than any other system lately, and you have to wonder maybe if it's the activity like this that led to Nintendo taking strict action. The story is still developing, but it seems that for now Yuzu and Citra are affected, but we will certainly be feeling the results of this court case for years to come. And one other thing I wanted to add to this story, because it still is developing, you might be asking, why was it that Yuzu specifically got taken down? What was it about them that led to all this happening? Well, when I look into it a little more deeply, I realized that Yuzu actually was behind, not a paywall, but they had a Patreon, all right? So they had a Patreon, meaning you could pay money to support the team doing this emulation. And at any point, when there's any money involved in making an emulator work or obtaining the more features of an emulator, it's going to be a huge problem legally. I know also for a fact that there was like a Yuzu, I remember reading like a Yuzu article where they specifically made it so that the emulator cut down features of letting people play Tears of the Kingdom early, which was a huge issue. But I think Nintendo was going to win no matter what. There's actually a tweet here from Dreaming Every Day, and he said, okay, a mutual broke down more context on the Yuzu case. Nintendo was going to win no matter what because Yuzu had support fixes for specifically Tears of the Kingdom emulation behind a Patreon they were charging for. Support fixes for Tears of the Kingdom emulation behind a Patreon. After finding that out, I understood why Nintendo went after them, GG. And honestly, I'm willing to bet that if it's just true, that was probably the main reason they went after them. Support fixes to get a game early ahead of time is already a big no-no, but you put that specifically behind a paywall, it was only a matter of time. Look, I know as a avid, Smash player, I've had my gripes with Nintendo as a company for a long time, but I will say, regardless of what you believe, leaking something early, and I've made the mistake of doing this too, leaking something early that affects the entirety of the gaming audience's purchasers or potentially people who's going to play them, is never a good thing in a general sense. It affects developers, people who get paid to do this for a living, testers, people who have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into this game. It affects all of them, and it's never a good idea to do so. So it's one of the things to always keep in mind. If you have the ability to leak and you get your hands on some really juicy information ahead of it, do your best to not leak it if it means the integrity of the game that you love, and maybe the audience of the game that you love. Maybe tease at it. That's one of the things I like about Pioro, the leaker on Twitter. He always gives little hints, but he never gives the full Monty, which is, I think, how leaking should be. But, yeah, if this is the case with the Tears of the Kingdom situation, then it was pretty much a ticking time bomb, and it was going to go down anyway. I don't know how it's going to affect other emulators in the next coming months. Usually what I notice Nintendo does is that they go for one big gotcha, like one big lawsuit to sort of set a precedent and point the finger at everyone else saying like this is what's going to happen. Like they use it to set an example, but I don't think they go full scorched earth and they put lawsuits on everyone, because that's just a PR disaster. But again, it is their IP, and yeah, if that's the case, then it was a big note moment. Anyways, let me know what you guys think below. What's your view on emulators? What's your view on Yuzu? How will it affect you? Who's in the right here? Who's in the wrong? All comments are welcome. Leave them below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.